What is the most valuable and highest paid work that you do? It's a really interesting question, because when I heard the question, I didn't know what the answer was. What do you think the highest paid and most valuable work is that you do? And the answer is thinking. Thinking is the most valuable work. Something is important if it has big potential consequences. And something is unimportant if it has low or no potential consequences. The number one reason for success is people focus on things that have high potential consequences. Number one reason for failure is people focus on things that have low or no potential consequences. Exactly what Joe was saying earlier, the famous Drucker quote, very worst use of time is to work intently on something that need not be done at all. And one of the things that is holding back entrepreneurs, business owners, it's killing them, by the way, and it's wiping out an entire generation, is this obsession with technology. I see people that are walking with their phone. It's almost like drug addicts that are mainline. They cannot stop staring at their screen. They cannot stop pushing their buttons. I hate to say there were people in this room that had that problem, but the fact is that this obsession with looking at the screen and staying connected is killing people, because it stops them from focusing. You cannot focus if you are distracted like an attention deficit disorder dog. So you're constantly ringing and responding to bells, almost like a crazy person in a toy factory. And so just as a quick aside, if thinking is the most important thing you do, because of the consequences of thinking determine the entire quality of your life, then the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your life. And so the more time that you spend thinking and thinking well and thinking clearly, the more successful you are. When your mind is calm, your entire cerebellum, the thinking and deciding brain, functions at its highest level, like turning up all the lights on a dimmer switch. It's functioning like a Christmas tree. But when you get upset and angry, what happens is your thinking reverts to your limbic or emotional system, and your ability to think clearly diminishes dramatically, and you make a lot of mistakes. That's why when you are facing a difficult situation, you have to use every skill, trick, game, whatever it is, to stay calm. And that's why they teach you to meditate. And they find that meditators in business are far more successful because they can automatically trigger their mind into the calm of meditation when they're facing a crisis. It enables them to think with greater clarity. There are two types of thinking. There's fast thinking and slow thinking. Fast thinking is intuitive, it's instinctive, it's automatic, it's reactionary. I think of it very much as how you would drive through busy traffic. You're not giving a lot of thought, you're just interacting. He said the other type of thinking is slow thinking. And slow thinking is where you just slow down the thinking and take time to think through issues. Now, if an issue has little or no consequences, then you can think quickly. What do you have for lunch? What do you pick up on your plate from the buffet? Where do you park your car? These are the consequences of these decisions are almost non-existent. But if it's a major issue, then you say, wait a minute, this requires slow thinking. Here is his contention that made the book a bestseller, is that the biggest problem that people have is that where they should use slow thinking, they use fast thinking. And entrepreneurs are extremely guilty of that, is we make important decisions that have long potential consequences, including affecting the lives of people and costing money and even leading to the bankruptcy of a business. We make those decisions with fast thinking when in reality we should be making them with slow thinking. And Peter Drucker said that fast people decisions are invariably wrong people decisions. Hiring an important person for an important job has tremendous potential consequences. So therefore you need to take a long time. One of the things I teach, which is in my book, How to Hire and Keep the Best People, is a simple rule that will increase your hiring accuracy to 90%. And I've taught it to Fortune 500 companies, and they make it a rule within their companies to use Brian's rule. You cannot hire except by doing this. And I didn't invent it, I just studied the hiring practices of the companies that hire the best people and keep them the longest. And they all, at the beginning, have a certain process that they follow, and they follow it religiously, no exceptions. And so their accuracy in hiring goes up to 90% or better because they think more. Then the interesting professor at the University of San Diego last year wrote a book on sort of thinking fast and slow, but it was on decision making. What he said is the longer that you take to make an important decision, the better the decision will be. the higher quality decision. And Lord Acton once said, when it is necessary, when it is not necessary to decide, it is necessary not to decide. In other words, the professor said, buy as much time as you can for a decision. Put it off. If you can put it off for a day, a weekend, a week, a month, put it off. Some of the best decisions that you make will be decisions that you will allow to steep for a while, like water and tea. So thinking is the most important thing you do. We call it thinking fast and slow. So remember, anything that is important that has long-term consequences is a candidate for slow thinking. Discussing it with other people, sitting quietly, going for a walk, letting it ruminate in your mind, sleeping on it. You know, they say if it's a big deal, sleep on it. That the difference between wealthy people and poor people is the length of time which they take into consideration when they make a decision. He said people who think short term almost invariably go for immediate gratification. He said people who think long term think of all the ramifications, very similar to Kahneman's work, thinking fast and slow. So he called it long-term perspective. And he said people with long-term perspective, they think 5 and 10 years into the future. One of the marks of superior people is that they're long-term thinkers. They make decisions very, very carefully, and with decisions that are long-term in their potential consequences, they take a long time to make the decision. Days, weeks, they will buy all the time possible. So you'll find that all successful people are long-time perspective thinkers. They think into the future, and then they come back from the future, like we talked about future orientation, thinking about the future. They come back from the future and they say, what do I need to do today to create that ideal future? When I do strategic planning for corporations, it's a very interesting process. The first thing I do is I have them say, describe to me this company if it was perfect 5 years from now. And I've done this with billion-dollar organizations with all the key people around a table like this. This is the pattern that I use. And I'll say, imagine that a leading business publication, Wall Street Journal, Times, or Fortune, Forbes, was going to write an article on this company in 5 years. And they were going to send out their best reporters to fan out over the country. They were going to talk to customers and competitors and staff and people and suppliers. And they were going to come back and they say, OMG, OMG, this is an incredible company. This is a fantastic company. This is the best single company in its industry. And they're going to write an absolutely glowing story on your company 5 years from now. The question is, if that were going to happen, what would you want them to say? What would you want them to say? And we go around the room and we say, what would people say if this was the greatest company in the industry? Best products and service, incredible customer service, fantastic IT, great leadership, best place to work, finest working climate, attractive, best place for people to get jobs at, incredible marketing, great selling, very efficient, high profit, high stock price. And we go around the room and it's almost like kids at Christmas. What would you like for Christmas? And every time I've done this, whether I do it in Russia with Sberbank, which has 22,000 branches and 165,000 people, or in London with Prudential, which has activities in 120 countries and $72 billion. Whatever it is, we have this almost like kids, and I write it down. I use it on flip charts, and I put it down, and then at the end, when nobody can think of anything else to say to describe this company, if it was incredible, I say, now let me ask you a question. You're settling down. I say, is this possible? And there's always a stop. And they look around at all these descriptions. And they say, yeah, yes. Not in a month or a year, but in 5 years, we could have the best products and great leadership and fantastic customer service and great IT systems and beautiful sales and an attractive place to work and the best training programs and the best reputation in the industry and high stock price and increased profits. They go on, everybody says, these are all possible. Right. I said, well, then let's organize them in sequence. What is an input? What is an output? First input, which we'll talk about in a couple of seconds, is really great products and services. So that's something we need to focus on because that's going to determine sales, profitability, and stock price. So what are the inputs and what are the outputs? And that's why we go around and create a strategic plan. And then we just walk through, what are the operational steps that we'll need to take to achieve this ideal description of this company sometime in the future. And who is going to be responsible for each different area, and how will we measure success in that area, and what will the schedule be? And everybody walks out of the 2 or 3 days completely wired. And this process, which I just explained to you, which all of you can use, and you could even now probably teach it, really works like a damn. It is absolutely infallible. I've had companies whose goal was to double their sales in the next 5 years, and they increased their sales 500%. And they called me up and they said, you couldn't believe it. Our goal was to go from 20 million to 40 million. We went to 105 million in 5 years with this stuff. Because now they're all thinking. And they're all thinking with great clarity. And they're all thinking long term. And we're forcing them to think slowly through each of these key areas. These are the individual building blocks of great business success.